Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated, Ben 10 Omniverse, and Transformers Animated. What do those three series have in common? Can you guess? I bet if you looked at the title of the video, you'd be able to. The latter two have a lot more in common than the first, though all three have at least three things in common. The latter two have the same composer and were both controversial additions to their franchises, though both have different, better general opinions nowadays. Unfortunate to me and the many others that gave them a try, they're one of the best in their respective franchises. Derrick J Wyatt, artist and writer with one of the most recognizable art styles in the industry. His works, though often shunned in the fan bases he's provided work for, usually have a certain nostalgia factor to them unmatched by almost anything else I can think of. More than anything else from my childhood, I think Transformers Animated has more of a sentimental nostalgia factor than most things you'd catch me reminiscing about. In fact, that show alone was what this video was originally going to be about. But after finding out he also had the biggest hand in Ben 10 Omniverse, another hypothetical video I would have made, I figured I'd kill two birds with one stone and just talk about the legacy of the one who crafted the stories, and how without him, I don't think any new cartoon will hold a candle to the creativity that was being poured into every project that he worked on. I'm mainly gonna just talk about Transformers Animated and Ben 10 Omniverse because I've only seen a few episodes of Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated. Mystery type shows aren't really my thing, though on the topic of the show, it's your average good Scooby-Doo show. Also, it's really horny, like Bowser or Captain Ginyu. So there's that. Anyway, my favorite Transformers thing ever, Transformers Animated. Agreed among hardcore fans to be one of the best Transformers series in the franchise, Animated released around the same time the first live-action movie was released, which is the reason for the name. Animated is a sort of celebration of everything Transformers that came before it. From Beast Wars to Headmasters to Combiners, this show takes elements from most of the series that came before it, whether they be good or bad. And I mean the series that the elements came from, not the elements themselves, most of which are used to good or even great effect in this show. Just using the examples I listed, we have the Headmaster unit, which while kind of annoying at first, later becomes a pretty threatening device that actually helps serve the plot to a certain degree. Combiners, while not used to the fullest, were being built up to with what would have been the grand return of Devastator to the series if Revenge of the Fallen didn't come out and if Transformers Animated didn't get cancelled. Also Jetfire and Jetstorm's fusion, but nobody talks about that. And of course, Beast Wars. Only represented by the lonesome Black Arachnia at first, her character is built upon throughout the series, culminating in what might have been the most exciting part of the story if it didn't get cancelled. Unfortunately, that's the case with a lot of beats in this story, suffering from an abrupt rest in the music because big companies will do anything but please their fans at the end of the day. Beast Wars got its second representative in the form of the return of Waspinator, a once goofy character turned to pure tragedy in the wake of Wasp's false accusation by the dumbest of Autobots and a double agent. Oh yeah, double agent. This show has not only something to reference everything that came before, but a plot thick enough to excuse it. I mean, there's a reason out of all the shows I saw as a kid, this still stands at the top despite not even finishing. It has traders, something to pique your interest in every character outside of their designs, and even plot twist. That's right, we get a couple of the best humans in all of Transformers and Isaac Sumdac and
I'm sorry.
Oh, don't be. I like my name.
one of them is best because of what they offer to the story, and the other because they're not human at all. See, this is how you write a lesser life form in a story with the most objectively cool concepts ever. You just make them another cool concept. Sorry Sumdac is yet another unfortunate case of companies not caring about their fans, because since Hasbro canceled the show, what she is exactly never fully gets explained. While it's a shame all these plot threads and the story itself didn't get a chance to finish, I'd say that all the loose ends are a testament to how rich the story was and how much potential the series had for an even more compelling end to it and the toys. Oh yeah, baby, you know I'm not gonna talk about Transformers Animated without mentioning the toy line. They're really out here making toys that translate just a stylized art style into toy form so well. I remember how often I used to play with them hoes too. I had Bulkhead, Bumblebee, Cybertron Optimus, Sentinel, Prowl, a Burger King Ratchet, bro. Lockdown, Soundwave, Starscream, Megatron, Black Arachnia, Jetfire, and Jetstorm. Dude, those memories make a nigga sad to think about, especially when all I have left of them now is this. One day they were all just gone, except Bulkhead. He was around for another while, and then he just disappeared too. I'm pretty sure my mother sold them without my or my brother's knowledge or consent, which ain't that some fucking monkey bullshit. Dang! Pissed me off to the point that I think I'm just gonna buy them all back, plus ones I never had, like this limited edition Blur. Enough about toys and Transformers for that matter, because aside from toys and the fact that it got canceled, there's nothing much to talk about. It's tragic that it has to be an incomplete piece of what could have been an immaculate, complete picture like so many other shows from that time of cartoons, with actual characters and meaningful stories to tell. Also, I don't want to spoil the story of that show too much, because although I know I won't get a single person watching this video to watch Transformers Animated, I can still hope. Although Derrick J Wyatt didn't have a hand in a lot of the Ben 10 series, he most certainly did in Ben 10 is a franchise with a controversial history in its 4 main series run, 5 if you count the reboot. While some of the controversies started all the way back in Season 3 of Alien Force and stayed throughout Ultimate Alien, most of it started with Derrick J Wyatt's Omniverse. Another sequel in Prime Ben's adventures, though unfortunately still mostly shunned in the fake base for its art style alone. Fake base being a pun for fan base because only fake fans would shun a show for something as niche as an art style. Of course, I am too good for something like that. As the show would go on, it would gain controversy for more than just its art style. Kevin's backstory, for example, received major criticism in Omniverse for retconning an already great backstory that UAF gave us. Along with a chunk of new aliens people didn't like, the show was all around disliked by the bulk of the fan base for a plethora of reasons. The story felt off to some, being more like separate arcs over the course of seasons instead of a connected feel of UAF. The disappearance of the main trio from UAF for most of the show, questionable designs for everyone including the aforementioned trio, the thought that this show acted as a reboot to the series starting with Ben as a kid, and as seems to be the problem with all reboots, the show being geared towards a younger audience once again. This idea being one that people believe to be the case for most of Derrick J Wyatt's shows. The art style comes back as a main culprit for this. And while I won't argue that that may be the case, especially with Transformers Animated being one of my favorite shows as a kid, I still believe there's a fine line between having an art style that primarily kids will enjoy and having an art style specifically made for youngins to enjoy. Personally, Derrick J Wyatt's art style is one of my favorites, and I find it much more pleasing to the eye than any other style seen in Cartoon Network's library. Even more so than the generic action genre style from the OG Teen Titans or even Genndy Tartakovsky's renowned art style. But as I said earlier, the art style is a niche point of conversation when it comes to television projects. So moving on from it, let's look at what Derrick J Wyatt added to the story and lore of Ben 10. As for any Ben 10 fans watching out there, don't worry. I know a good portion of you still haven't seen this show, and seeing as how highly I recommend it for any Ben 10 fan who has been holding out on it, I won't be spoiling anything in this video. Just going over some things that are pretty generic to the overall story or any of its arcs. So I actually lied here because the very next thing I talk about is some Alien X feats, so yeah. Go watch the show. Starting off with feats, most people know that Alien X is Ben 10's most powerful alien. It was introduced in Alien Force as a last resort for when things got too out of hand to fix with any other alien. In UAF, it stopped the flood, and the other 2 personalities within refused to share the location of the Forge of Creation. So I think it's safe to say that we didn't get its full potential in UAF. Luckily, in Omniverse, we get to see a lot more done with what is dubbed as the most powerful alien. In fact, Omniverse is where most of its feats come from. Recreating the universe, Ben gaining full control of it and defeating another celestial sapien immediately after, and Alien X being one of the aliens used to defeat the Plumber's helpers, all done in Omniverse and all memorable scenes to be sure. But who cares about beating Goku if the story you hail from isn't good? As I said before, this story is separated into arcs, each making up the season they were part of. Most of them are about 10 episodes, though it's more like 6 if you take the filler into account. And while I say filler, the lighthearted nature of the show makes it feel like all the stories are equally important. So with most of the one-off episodes, you get the same satisfaction you would get from the more important episodes. Most being the operative word of that sentence. Some of the episodes, I gotta admit, gotta be the worst in the series. I can't remember what they are off the top of my head on account of probably not even finishing them, but I do know they're there. I also know that some of my favorite Ben 10 episodes are here, my most favorite being Ben 10 vs. the Universe. I'd spoil it, but I'm trying not to spoil anything else after having spoiled the feats of Alien X. The bulk of the arcs are good with only a couple outliers, but at that point I think it's subjectivity instead of where single episodes can just be bad. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the story, which I know is the only thing a lot of people like to pretend to care about nowadays. So at this point, all I gotta say on the story front is that the majority of it is good, so watch it. Anything else I have to say about Omniverse is best said in the Ink Tanks video about why you should give it a chance, which I definitely recommend watching. He's part of the reason I finally watched it after putting it on a watch list for so long. As for those two shows, that's about it. Now I just want to say a few words about Derrick J Wyatt's legacy, because it's one that people often overlook. With him gone and Genny Tartakovsky seeming to have moved on to adult animation, I just want to look back at what cartoons used to be. How much emotion they used to carry, and how the last thing we got from our age of cartoons was Steven Universe. And we all know the reputation that show has. The age of action cartoons in the early 2000s with the already talked about Transformers Animated and all four Ben 10 series, plus shows like Teen Titans, Symbiotic Titan, Generator X, The Clone Wars, and other stuff with actual heart and care put into it. A lot of them stylized to the point that they took a permanent place in my head as a unique point in my fat ass childhood. And now that Jay Wyatt has passed, I feel like the whole era went with him, and Omniverse was what he left as a reminder of that time. Most of his works were and still are controversial for some reason, but in the words of Riley Freeman, kind of.
Hey, if niggas ain't mad at you, then you doing something wrong.
And while people weren't actively mad at Jay Wyatt, to my knowledge, they still was hating on all his works, for no reason. You don't see that as much nowadays. So for whatever it's worth, and whatever you take from this little video, know that he was definitely doing something that gave his series that special nostalgic edge, and he will forever live in his fans' hearts because of it. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful day so far, and if not, I hope this little trip down nostalgic cartoon lane was able to brighten your day at least a little bit. This is all the time and energy I have for today, so I'll talk to you all later, and as always, remember to stay ambitious.